Billionaire hires a call girl to pretend as his son's mother, but what she did shocked everyone. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. God will bless you if you comment Amen on this video. Now, let's get back to our main character. The glass windows of the Blackwood Tower gleamed under the morning sun, reflecting a city that never stopped moving. Inside the 48th floor, Alexander Blackwood sat at the head of a long mahogany table, his posture sharp, his eyes colder than the skyline behind him. On the screen, a lawyer's voice boomed, "If the court doesn't see a stable family unit, your mother could claim full custody of Ethan. They'll call you an unfit parent." The boardroom was silent. Not a single executive dared to breathe too loudly. Alexander's jaw tightened. A man who had conquered markets, crushed competitors, and built empires reduced to defending his ability to raise his own son. His mother's words still echoed from last night's confrontation. "A child needs a mother, Alexander, not your iron heart." He had no wife, no partner, no family image to parade in front of the court. And then, with the same decisiveness he used to close billion-dollar deals, Alexander snapped his fingers. "Get me someone. Anyone. I don't care who she is. For the next month, Ethan will have a mother." The room exchanged uneasy glances. They knew what he meant. A performance, a contract, a lie polished enough to look like truth. That night, under dim neon lights and the hum of passing cars, a woman leaned against a cracked brick wall downtown. Maya Carter, dark hair falling over tired eyes. Red dress a little too tight, heels a little too high. She was used to men looking at her and seeing only a role. Never the person, but when the black limousine stopped at the curb and the driver opened the door, something in her gut told her this wasn't just another client. Alexander Blackwood stepped out. Perfect suit, cold stare. The kind of man who didn't ask, he commanded. "Maya Carter?" His voice was flat, almost bored. She raised a brow. "Depends on who's asking. If you're a cop, I've got the wrong name. If you're a client, I'm expensive." He didn't flinch. "You'll be my son's mother." Maya let out a sharp laugh, tugging at her jacket. "That's a new one. Usually, men want a girlfriend for the night. You're jumping straight to motherhood?" "This isn't negotiable," Alexander said. "You'll move into my home. You'll act as Ethan's mother. Payment will be triple your usual rate." Her smirk faded for a moment. "And what happens when the boy figures out I'm not his mother? Or when people start asking questions?" Alexander's eyes narrowed. "You'll do your job, pretend, and you'll keep your mouth shut." She tilted her head, studying him. Cold, arrogant, used to buying solutions the way other people bought groceries. "Well," Maya said slowly, "at least you're honest about it being a deal. But here's the thing, Mr. Blackwood. I don't sell love, only performances. You want a mother for your son? Fine. But don't expect me to kiss scraped knees or tell bedtime stories." For the first time, Alexander's jaw twitched as if her defiance cracked the armor around him. "We'll see." The next morning, the grand foyer of the Blackwood mansion was lit like a cathedral. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, portraits of ancestors glaring down. Maya walked in, her red heels echoing against the stone. She felt like an intruder in a museum where she didn't belong. A boy stood at the top of the staircase. Ethan, 7 years old, holding a toy dinosaur in his hand. His eyes wide, cautious, curious. "Is she my mom?" he asked softly. Maya froze. Her rehearsed sarcasm slipped. No client had ever asked her that. No one had ever looked at her with such fragile hope. Alexander's voice cut through the silence. "Yes, Ethan, this is your mother." Maya's throat tightened. She forced a smile, her voice barely steady. "Hi, buddy." Ethan didn't move. He just stared, as if trying to memorize her face, afraid she'd disappear. And in that moment, Maya felt something she hadn't expected. A pang in her chest. Guilt. That evening, the three of them arrived at a family dinner in the Blackwood estate. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware shone, and whispers floated like smoke. The Blackwood relatives sat in a long line, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Alexander's mother at the center, regal and merciless. "And who," she said, voice dripping with disdain, "is this woman?" Alexander's tone was even. "My son's mother." The room went still. A cousin stifled a laugh. An aunt gasped. Someone muttered, "Impossible." Maya felt every gaze like daggers on her skin. She lifted her chin, fighting the urge to shrink. When a glass of wine was accidentally spilled near Ethan, she reacted without thinking. In one swift motion, she pulled the boy close, shielding him from the mess. "Careful," she said firmly, glaring at the waiter. "Children don't belong in your games." The entire table froze. It wasn't just what she said, it was the way she said it. Protective, fierce, real. Alexander's mother narrowed her eyes. For the first time, doubt flickered in them. And Alexander, usually stone-faced, watched Maya with something he hadn't expected, curiosity. But when the dinner ended and they walked out into the cold night, Alexander stopped by the car and faced her. "You went off script," he said flatly. Maya smirked. "What? Protecting your kid wasn't in the contract?" His eyes burned into hers. "Don't confuse the role with reality. This is business. Nothing more." Maya leaned in, her smile sharp. "Then why, Mr. Blackwood? Did it feel like you almost believed me tonight?" For a second, he didn't answer. His silence was louder than words. And that was the moment Maya realized this game was far more dangerous than she thought. Back inside the mansion, Ethan waited by the stairs, clutching his dinosaur. His small voice echoed in the hall. "Mom, will you read me a story tonight?" Maya froze. Alexander turned sharply, his mask cracking for just a moment. The deal had only just begun, but already, the lines between contract and truth were starting to blur. The following days inside the Blackwood mansion unfolded like a strange play where everyone knew their lines except Maya. Every morning, the staff lined up as Alexander descended the staircase. Crisp suit, unreadable face. Beside him, Ethan clutched Maya's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Maya, she played the role she had been paid for. At least, she tried. At breakfast, Ethan refused to eat the oatmeal the chef had prepared. He pushed the bowl away, pouting. "Mom makes pancakes." The room went silent. Maya blinked. Her mouth opened, but no script had been written for this. Alexander's sharp gaze landed on her, a warning unspoken. She swallowed hard. "Pancakes, huh?" She forced a smile, rolling up her sleeves. "Then pancakes it is." The staff exchanged confused looks as Maya stormed into the high-tech kitchen, rummaging through cabinets like she owned the place. Flour dusted her dress. A trail of eggshells hit the trash can. When the pan hissed and the smell of butter filled the air, Ethan's eyes lit up. He devoured the first pancake with syrup dripping down his chin. Alexander's fork paused midair. For the first time in years, the breakfast table didn't feel like a courtroom. It felt alive. But instead of gratitude, his tone was cold. "Don't make this a habit." Maya smirked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Relax, Mr. Blackwood. I don't cook for free. Put it on my invoice." Ethan giggled. The sound echoed across marble walls that rarely knew laughter. Later that week, Alexander brought Maya to a corporate charity gala. A night of glittering gowns, champagne towers, and deals sealed with fake smiles. Maya walked into the ballroom, draped in a midnight blue dress the stylist had chosen. Diamonds borrowed from a safe glistened at her neck. Yet somehow, beneath the sparkle, she still carried the quiet defiance of someone who didn't belong. Whispers followed them the moment they entered. "Who is she?" "Not his type. Too raw." "She's no socialite." Alexander ignored them, but Maya heard every word. She straightened her back, holding Ethan's small hand tighter, as if daring anyone to say it louder. When reporters swarmed, Alexander delivered his line flawlessly. "This is Maya, the mother of my son." Cameras flashed. Questions rained. One journalist asked, "And where have you been hiding until now, Mrs. Blackwood?" Maya's smile didn't falter. "Hiding? No, I was just busy raising the only man in this room worth my time." She squeezed Ethan's hand. The boy beamed. For a moment, silence fell. Then a murmur rippled through the crowd. Some laughed, some frowned, but none forgot. Alexander's eyes flickered with something almost like amusement. Almost. But not everyone was entertained. Meredith Blackwood, Alexander's ex-fiancée and socialite darling, stepped forward in a crimson gown. Her eyes scanned Maya like she was a stain on silk. "Well," Meredith purred, "Alexander always had unconventional tastes." Maya tilted her head. "And you always had a talent for backhanded compliments. Some things never change." Gasps, whispers. The tension was thick enough to cut with a diamond. Alexander's jaw clenched. His hand brushed Maya's elbow, a silent signal to stop. But Maya simply smiled, her eyes steady on Meredith's blank. It was the first time anyone had dared to spar with Meredith Blackwood in public and win. The night should have ended there, but fate wasn't done. During the gala's silent auction, Ethan slipped from his chair, wandering toward the balcony. A waiter, distracted, nearly spilled a tray of champagne flutes near him. In an instant, Maya was there. She grabbed Ethan, shielding him with her body as glasses shattered across the floor. Gasps filled the hall. Shards glittered like stars on the marble. Ethan buried his face in her dress, unhurt. "Watch where you're going." Maya snapped at the waiter, her voice fierce, protective. Every eye turned. And in that moment, she didn't look like a call girl in borrowed diamonds. She looked like a mother. Alexander's chest tightened. He hated how real it looked, how real it felt. Later, in the limousine ride back, the silence was sharp. Maya stroked Ethan's hair as he dozed against her. She looked out the tinted window, city lights flickering across her face. "You should thank me," she muttered without looking at Alexander. He bristled. "For what?" "For making your little charade believable." She turned, her eyes meeting his. "You paid for a performance, but tonight they saw something you can't buy." His jaw tightened. "Don't overstep." "Ugh." She leaned back, smirking faintly. "I already did, and you liked it." His glare should have silenced her, but something in his chest stirred a thought he didn't dare name. That night, as Maya tucked Ethan into bed, the boy looked up sleepily. "Mom," he whispered, "can you stay until I fall asleep?" Maya hesitated. The word cut deeper than she expected. She sat on the edge of his bed, humming softly, fingers brushing his hair. For the first time in years, Ethan drifted off with a smile. And from the doorway, Alexander watched in silence. The image burned into him, the woman he had hired, a stranger, succeeding in giving his son something he had failed to provide: warmth. The contract was supposed to be a lie. But already, the lines were blurring in ways neither of them could control. By the end of the week, the photographs from the gala were everywhere. Magazines, blogs, business tabloids. A billionaire with a mysterious woman and a child by his side. Some headlines were flattering. Blackwood finally settles down. Family man Alexander? But others dug deeper. Who is this woman? From where did she appear overnight? Maya's face, once anonymous in neon shadows, now filled glossy spreads. She wasn't prepared for it. She never had been. At breakfast, Ethan flipped through a magazine left on the counter. His small finger pointed at a photo. "Mom, it's you." Maya froze, pancake spatula in her hand. The picture showed her in the blue gown, head high, hand protectively on Ethan's shoulder. She looked dignified, almost royal. Her throat tightened. She smiled faintly. "Guess the world finally noticed us, huh?" Across the table, Alexander sipped his coffee in silence. The headlines didn't matter to him, or so he claimed. But his mother's words from their last call still burned. "This farce won't last. They'll find out what she is." He pushed the paper away, unwilling to meet Maya's eyes. 2 days later, it happened. An anonymous leak, a blog post. Then a tabloid cover with a headline in bold black letters. "Blackwood's mystery woman. Escort exposed. Details spilled like poison." Photos from Maya's past nights. A client list whispered in smoke-filled bars. Her name attached to rumors she had fought for years to bury. By afternoon, the news had spread like wildfire. Board members whispered. Clients hesitated. Social media tore her apart. At the mansion, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, screen glowing with comments too cruel to read twice. "Trash. Gold digger. Not fit to be near a child." Her hands shook. For years she had worn armor made of sarcasm and painted lips. But tonight, that armor cracked. The door opened. Ethan padded in, clutching his toy dinosaur. Why are people saying mean things, Mom? Her heart broke. She pulled him close, swallowing the lump in her throat. Because they don't know me, baby, and people fear what they don't understand. Ethan buried his face against her chest, trusting her words. Trust she wasn't sure she deserved. Downstairs, Alexander was on the phone, pacing his office like a caged panther. I don't care what the media says. Contain it. I want statements controlled by tonight. His lawyer's voice came through, cold and precise. Alexander, this could compromise the custody case. The court will argue your son is being exposed to an unstable influence. He slammed the phone down, jaw tight. For once, his control seemed fragile. The door opened. Maya stepped in, her face pale but steady. So, she said quietly. They know. He looked up, eyes sharp. I told you to keep a low profile. She laughed bitterly. What was I supposed to do, Alexander? Erase my past? Pretend I was born in silk sheets? This could cost me my son, he snapped. Her chest clenched. The way he said me, not us. You think I wanted this? She whispered. Do you think I don't know what it feels like to be dragged through the dirt? I lived it. Every day. For a moment, silence. Their eyes locked, anger and pain colliding. But then Ethan's small voice came from the hall. Dad? Why are you yelling at Mom? The word Mom hung in the air like a verdict neither of them had asked for, but both had to face. The following evening, a charity event hosted at the Blackwood Hotel turned into a spectacle. Paparazzi swarmed, flashbulbs blinded. As Alexander and Maya stepped onto the carpet, the questions hit like bullets. Is it true she's an escort? Are you endangering your son, Mr. Blackwood? Maya, what do you say to people calling you unfit? Alexander's security tried to push them back, but the words sliced through the night. Maya stood frozen, heart pounding. She could feel the eyes of the world dissecting her. But then Ethan's small hand slipped into hers, grounding her. His trust gave her courage. She lifted her chin, looked directly at the cameras, and spoke. You want to know who I am? I'm the woman who loves this child enough to protect him when no one else will. Call me what you want, but to him, I'm Mom. The crowd gasped, some sneered. But others saw the fire in her eyes and hesitated. Alexander's breath caught. He hadn't written those words for her. She wasn't following his script. Yet for the first time, he realized she didn't need one. Because in that moment, she wasn't pretending. Inside the ballroom, whispers followed them like shadows. Businessmen frowned, socialites sneered. Meredith's smile cut like glass. But when Alexander reached for Maya's hand, not out of duty, not out of pretense, but something unspoken, the room stilled. And for a fleeting second, she let him hold it. It was reckless, dangerous, real. And both of them knew the game had just changed. The fallout was merciless. The morning after the gala, newspapers screamed headlines that cut sharper than knives. Escort masquerades as Blackwood matriarch. Business titan endangers his son. Television pundits debated her worth. Online forums tore apart her photos, one cruel comment at a time. And at the mansion, the silence was heavier than stone. Maya walked into the kitchen, shoulders squared, though her chest burned. The staff avoided her eyes. Whispers floated behind her back like smoke. She poured herself coffee, pretending not to hear. Cheap. Doesn't belong here. What will happen to the boy? The cup trembled in her hand, but she refused to let it spill. When Ethan bounded in, all bright-eyed innocence, she forced a smile. Morning, champ. He hugged her waist like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. Later, Alexander called an emergency board meeting. Executives circled the table, their faces grim. Contracts, numbers, graphs, all overshadowed by the same question whispered too loudly. Can the Blackwood Empire survive this scandal? One board member, older and bolder than the rest, leaned forward. She's destroying your credibility, Alexander. End this farce. Distance yourself before it ruins us all. Another added, custody battles, media backlash. It's bad for business. Release a statement. Disown her. The words stabbed like betrayal, though Alexander's face betrayed nothing. Still, when his silence stretched too long, the board took it as consent. And Maya, standing outside the half-open door, heard every word. That night, she confronted him in the study. You're really going to let them talk about me like that? Her voice shook with fury. Alexander didn't look up from his glass of scotch. This isn't about you. It's about Ethan. About protecting him. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Protecting him? By pretending I don't exist? By letting the world call me trash while you sip whiskey in silence? His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. You're a coward, Alexander, she whispered. You'd rather lose the one person who actually cares about your son than risk your reputation. For the first time, his eyes flickered with something raw. But he still didn't stop her when she turned and walked away. In her room, Maya packed quickly. Dresses the stylist had chosen, jewelry she never asked for, all left behind. Only her own faded clothes went into the small suitcase. Ethan burst in, panic in his eyes. Mom, where are you going? Her hands froze on the zipper. She knelt, cupping his face. I'm not your real mom, sweetheart. You know that. He shook his head fiercely, tears brimming. You are to me. Her throat closed. She kissed his forehead, fighting tears of her own. I'll always love you, Ethan, but I can't stay where I'm not wanted. He clung to her desperately. Don't leave, please. But she pried his little hands off gently, every movement breaking her heart. When she walked out with her suitcase, Ethan's sobs echoed through the marble halls. And Alexander, standing at the top of the stairs, listened. He didn't move. He didn't stop her. He let the door close. And the silence that followed was louder than any scandal. The days after her departure were colder than any winter. Ethan refused breakfast. His laughter vanished. He barely spoke to his father. At night, Alexander stood in the doorway of his son's room, watching him hug the toy dinosaur like it was a lifeline. Every time, Ethan whispered the same word before sleep. Mom. And Alexander realized he had won every battle in the business world but lost the only war that mattered. Meanwhile, Maya returned to the small apartment she once called home. The walls were cracked, the furniture old, but at least the silence was honest. She tried to convince herself it was better this way, that she had protected Ethan by leaving. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his face, his tears, his voice calling her, Mom. And for the first time in years, Maya Carter, the woman who never let anyone see her cry, broke. She pressed her palms to her eyes, whispering to the empty room, What have I done? The empire of Alexander Blackwood stood tall. The stock market stabilized. The board stopped panicking. But inside the mansion, a boy was growing quieter by the day, and a billionaire who thought he had everything discovered what true emptiness felt like. And deep down, both Alexander and Maya knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a storm. Neither of them could escape. The custody hearing arrived on a gray Monday morning. Rain streaked down courthouse windows, blurring the city outside. Inside, the air was sharp with tension. Alexander Blackwood sat at the defendant's table, his suit immaculate, but his face hollow. Across the aisle, his mother's legal team prepared their weapon stacks of files, affidavits, and witnesses ready to dismantle him. And beside him, Ethan sat small and quiet, clutching the toy dinosaur like it was the last safe thing in his world. The judge entered. Papers shuffled. Voices rose, sharp and merciless. Mr. Blackwood cannot provide a stable family unit, one attorney declared. His son is exposed to scandal, to dangerous influences. The boy deserves better. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Journalists scribbled, cameras clicked. Alexander sat still, jaw tight. He had faced billion-dollar lawsuits, hostile takeovers, cutthroat rivals, but nothing felt as suffocating as this. Because this wasn't about money, this was about Ethan. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he was losing. The prosecution brought out their evidence, tabloid covers splashed across screens, headlines screaming about Maya. Escort, call girl, fraud. Each word was another nail in the coffin. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He looked up at his father, voice trembling. Dad, are they taking me away? Alexander's chest tightened. He wanted to promise no. He wanted to say he'd fight until his last breath. But his silence spoke louder than lies. Then, just as the court prepared to rule, the doors opened. Every head turned. Maya Carter stepped inside. She wasn't in designer gowns or borrowed diamonds. She wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her face bare. Yet she walked with a quiet fire that silenced the whispers. Alexander's breath caught. Ethan's eyes lit up. And for the first time since she left, the world seemed to shift. The judge frowned. And you are? Maya's voice was steady. Maya Carter. The woman these papers call unfit. The woman you've dragged through the mud without ever letting me speak for myself. Gasps. Murmurs. Pens scratched furiously. She stepped forward, hands trembling but her chin high. Yes, I was an escort. I don't hide from my past. I did what I had to do to survive. But let me tell you what else I've done. Her eyes softened as they landed on Ethan. I held this boy's hand when he was scared. I cooked for him when he refused to eat. I shielded him when glass shattered near him. I sang him to sleep when nightmares came. And not once did I do it for money. I did it because I care. The courtroom was silent. I may not have the pedigree of a Blackwood. I may not have a spotless reputation. But if being a mother is about love, about sacrifice, then I've been more of a mother to Ethan than anyone else in this room. Her voice cracked, but she didn't falter. And if you take him from Alexander, you're not protecting him. You're tearing apart the only family he knows. The judge leaned back, eyes thoughtful. Attorneys shuffled uneasily. But the moment belonged not to them, not to the court, but to Ethan. The boy slipped from his chair, running into Maya's arms. "Mom," he whispered, holding her tight. And the courtroom, for all its laws and rules, could not deny the truth in that single word. Alexander stood, his mask cracking, his voice rough. "Your Honor, I was wrong. I thought I could control this, script it like a business deal. But what Maya just said is the truth. She's shown my son more love than I ever managed to. She's not perfect, neither am I. But together we are his family." The judge's gavel struck once, sharp. This court will deliberate further. But one thing is clear. The boy's bond with this woman cannot be ignored. As the room emptied, reporters swarmed. But all Alexander saw was Maya, standing tall despite the storm. He moved closer, voice low, raw. "Why did you come back?" She met his gaze, eyes glistening. "Because Ethan needed me. And maybe because you did too." His chest tightened. The words he had never been able to say hovered on his tongue. But before he could speak, she turned to Ethan, holding him close. And Alexander realized sometimes the strongest truths weren't in contracts or declarations. They were in the quiet moments, the unscripted choices, the love that refused to be silenced. And deep down, he knew this battle was far from over. It had only just begun. The courthouse steps were chaos. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward, questions hurled like stones. "Alexander, do you admit she was your mistress? Are you fit to raise a child in this environment? Maya, do you regret deceiving the public?" Security tried to form a barrier, but the voices were relentless. Maya shielded Ethan with her body, heart pounding. She had walked back into the fire willingly, but she hadn't expected the flames to burn this hot. Then she felt it Alexander's hand, firm on her back. He stepped in front of her, his voice slicing through the noise. "Enough." "Ma." The crowd hushed. Reporters leaned forward, recorders ready. Alexander's eyes scanned the sea of flashing lights. His jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. "You want the truth? Fine. Maya Carter is not a fraud. She is the woman who stood by my son when no one else did. She is the reason he smiles again. And if you want to call that scandalous, so be it. But don't you dare question her worth as a mother." The gasp was audible. Headlines were already writing themselves. For the first time, Alexander Blackwood wasn't defending his empire. He was defending her. That night, the story replayed on every channel. News anchors called it shocking. Analysts debated whether it was damage control or confession. But inside the Blackwood mansion, the tension had shifted. At dinner, Ethan leaned against Maya, his small voice content. "You stayed." She kissed his hair softly. "I told you I would." Across the table, Alexander watched, his fork untouched, his gaze heavy with words he still couldn't speak. For years, he had lived in a world of power and silence. But now, silence was no longer enough. 2 days later, a charity event loomed. The same circles that once whispered in disgust now waited to see how Alexander would present himself. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and crystal, but beneath the glamour was venom. Reporters lined the edges, pens sharpened. Alexander entered with Maya and Ethan at his side. Gasps rippled. One bold reporter called out, "Mr. Blackwood, do you confirm your relationship with this woman?" All eyes turned, cameras ready. Maya's hand trembled. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floor. But Alexander didn't hesitate. He pulled her closer, his voice calm, commanding. "Yes," he said. "She is the woman I trust, the woman my son calls mother, and I will not hide her." The words fell like thunder. Maya's breath caught. For years she had been nothing more than a transaction, a shadow on the margins of men's lives. But tonight, in front of the world, Alexander Blackwood had claimed her as something more. The backlash was instant. Some applauded. Others jeered. Socialites sneered, whispers sharp as glass. Meredith Blackwood approached, her smile venomous. "So this is your grand statement? Replacing pedigree with pity?" Alexander's eyes narrowed. "No, Meredith, replacing lies with truth." The sting silenced her, and for once, she had no retort. Maya watched, stunned. This wasn't the man who once ordered her around like an employee. This was a man tearing down walls he had built his whole life. And she didn't know whether to be terrified or grateful. Later that night, in the quiet of the mansion, Maya found Alexander alone in his study. The firelight carved shadows across his face. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. He didn't look up. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "You've spent your whole life protecting your reputation. Why risk it now?" Finally, his gaze lifted, raw and unguarded. "Because for once, my reputation doesn't matter. He does. You do." Her breath caught. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Heavy, fragile, real. Maya's heart raced. She wanted to believe him. But scars from her past whispered doubts. "Alexander," she said quietly, "words are easy. Actions are what count." He stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing. "Then watch me." Upstairs, Ethan stirred in his sleep, whispering her name. And downstairs, two adults who had built walls around their hearts for years stood on the edge of something neither of them had planned. Not a contract, not a performance. Something far more dangerous. Something far more real. For the first time in years, the Blackwood mansion felt alive. The long dining table no longer echoed with silence. Laughter soft, tentative now filled its corners. Ethan giggled as Maya coaxed him into eating vegetables with silly voices. Alexander watched, hidden behind the shield of his wineglass. The sight was foreign, disarming, a family scene that had never existed in his world of cold marble and sharper deals. He should have looked away, but he couldn't. Days turned into weeks. Maya no longer moved like a guest in the mansion. She knew where Ethan hid his toys, how he liked his milk warmed, which lullaby soothed him fastest. And slowly, without realizing, she had begun to know Alexander too. He still worked late into the night, his office lit long after the city slept. But sometimes she would catch him at the piano, hands moving over keys with a softness that contradicted his steel facade. Sometimes she saw him stand at Ethan's door, watching his son sleep, guilt heavy on his face. And sometimes, when their eyes met across a quiet room, something unspoken lingered, something neither dared name. But outside the mansion, the storm grew darker. Headlines mocked their bond. Talk shows questioned her every move. Anonymous voices online painted her as a parasite clinging to Alexander's fortune. One morning, Maya opened the mailbox and froze. Inside was a torn photo of her and Ethan, slashed through the middle. A note scribbled in red ink. "You don't belong here." Her hands shook as she hid it away. She told no one. But that night, when Alexander found her standing alone on the balcony, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, he sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing," she lied. His eyes narrowed. He didn't press. But deep down, he knew the truth. The world was turning against her, against them. The breaking point came at a business gala in Chicago. It was supposed to be routine, another night of handshakes and contracts. Alexander brought Maya and Ethan, determined to show unity. But unity was the last thing the crowd offered. Whispers sharpened into accusations. A woman accidentally brushed wine across Maya's dress. Men laughed too loudly at cruel jokes. Cameras caught every moment. Maya stood tall, her chin high. But inside, she was breaking. Later, in the ladies' room, she overheard two socialites sneering. "She'll never be one of us. He'll get bored. They always do." Maya clenched her fists, forcing back tears. She wanted to storm out, to scream, but she knew their poison was exactly what they wanted. Instead, she walked back into the ballroom, her hand finding Ethan's. His little fingers squeezed hers, as if reminding her who she was really fighting for. On the flight home, silence filled the private jet. Ethan slept peacefully across the aisle. Maya stared out the window, city lights fading into darkness. Her voice finally broke the quiet. "Alexander, this is destroying you," he frowned. "What are you talking about? Your reputation, your business, everything you've built. It's all being dragged down because of me." His tone was sharp. "Don't say that. It's the truth," she whispered. "I should go, before it gets worse." Ah. Something in him snapped. His hand reached for hers, firm, unyielding. "Number, you're not leaving. Not again." Her heart pounded. Why? Why fight so hard for me when it would be easier to let go? His eyes burned into hers, raw and unguarded. "Because I can't." The words hung heavy between them. For a man who had built empires, it was the closest thing to surrender. Back at the mansion, his mother was waiting. She stood at the grand staircase, her presence colder than the marble beneath her feet. "You think defiance makes you strong, Alexander?" she hissed. "This woman will be your ruin. End it now, or I will take Ethan myself." Maya's face paled. Ethan clutched her skirt, sensing the venom even if he didn't understand. Alexander's voice was ice. "Try it, and you'll lose more than custody. You'll lose me." The words stunned even Maya. For the first time, Alexander had chosen openly, undeniably. But choices have consequences, and the war inside the Blackwood family was only beginning. The storm that had been building finally broke. It began with whispers, board members meeting behind closed doors, calls unanswered, deals suddenly stalling. But Alexander had faced corporate betrayal before. He knew how to fight sharks in suits. What he didn't expect was the dagger aimed not at his empire, but at Maya. One evening, while Ethan worked on a school project at the kitchen island, Maya scrolled through her phone. Her breath caught. A headline screamed from a gossip site. "Exclusive. Maya Carter arrested in prostitution sting, 2017. Below it, a blurry mugshot. Her. She remembered that night all too well, the one time she had been at the wrong place. Wrong client, wrong raid. Charges dropped. Case dismissed. But the stain had lingered in shadows, waiting. Now it was dragged into the light. She shut the phone quickly, her pulse racing. Ethan didn't need to see. But Alexander did. When she showed him, his jaw clenched, eyes darkening. "They dug this up on purpose." "Your mother," Maya whispered. "Her, and the vultures circling my company. They want to break us from the inside." Maya's voice trembled. "And what if it works? What if this ruins everything?" He stepped closer, his hand gripping hers. "Then we fight, together." But she wasn't sure she believed him. Not when the ghosts of her past had sharper claws than any enemy in the boardroom. The next day, reporters ambushed her outside Ethan's school. Cameras shoved in her face, microphones barking questions. "Were you arrested for solicitation? Are you exposing a child to this life? Is Blackwood protecting a criminal?" Maya shielded Ethan, her body shaking. She wanted to scream, to run, but she couldn't show weakness. "Leave us alone!" she shouted, pulling him toward the car. The scene went viral within hours. Clips replayed on every channel, edited to make her look hysterical, dangerous. The world wasn't just doubting her now, it was crucifying her. Inside the mansion, tension boiled. Alexander slammed his fist on the desk, voice raw. "They're manufacturing this, planting old files, twisting them. It's deliberate." Maya stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here." His head snapped up. "Don't you dare say that. You don't get it," she whispered. "Your mother, your rivals, they have power, money, influence. And me? I have nothing but a past they can twist into whatever they want." "Oh," his voice softened. "You have me." Her eyes met his, full of doubt and longing. But before she could respond, Ethan ran in, holding a crumpled paper. "Dad, kids at school said Mom's bad, that she'll get taken away." The silence after his words was heavier than stone. That night, Maya packed a small bag. She stood by the doorway, tears burning her eyes. "If I stay, they'll use me to destroy you. Destroy him. I can't do that." Alexander caught her wrist, desperation breaking through his walls. Leaving won't protect him. It'll only break him. Her voice cracked. Then what do I do? For once, he didn't have an answer. Meanwhile, in the shadows of a private club, Alexander's mother sipped champagne with a rival CEO. She won't last, she said smoothly. Scandal will eat her alive, and when she falls, Alexander will have no choice but to return to the family's way. The rival smirked, and his empire will be wide open for the taking. Glasses clinked, an alliance sealed, and Maya Carter, unaware of the full scale of the storm, slept fitfully in Alexander's mansion while enemies plotted her ruin. The next morning, the front page hit like a bomb. Blackwood heiress in danger. Child raised by escort with criminal past. Ethan's picture, Maya's mugshot. Side by side. It wasn't just about her anymore. They had dragged Ethan into the fire. Maya's knees buckled as she held the paper. Her worst fear had come true. And Alexander, standing beside her, knew. This was no longer just about reputation or business. This was war. The blow came on a Wednesday morning. Police cars outside the Blackwood mansion. Blue and red lights flashing against marble walls. Maya stood frozen as two officers approached. "Miss Carter," one said flatly, "you're under investigation for endangering the welfare of a child." Her heart stopped. "What? Number? That's insane, I would never—" But before she could finish, they placed papers in her hands. Court documents, a complaint filed anonymously, backed with evidence. Photos blurred, manipulated, showing her at clubs, near strangers. A doctored report claiming she left Ethan unattended. It was a trap. A perfect one. Ethan clung to her leg, terrified. "Mom? What's happening?" She knelt, forcing a smile through tears. "It's okay, baby. It's going to be okay." But her eyes betrayed her. She didn't believe it. Alexander stormed into the foyer, voice like thunder. "This is ridiculous. You will not take her." The officers exchanged uneasy looks. "Mr. Blackwood, we're following procedure. She's not under arrest, but she must appear in court." Court, custody, reputation, every weapon sharpened against her. The story exploded within hours. Blackwood's mistress under investigation for child neglect. Ethan Blackwood at risk? News anchors dissected her life. Experts debated her fitness. Social media was merciless. And through it all, Maya sat in silence, her hands shaking, her soul unraveling. She thought she had been hardened by years of survival, but this was different. Because this time, it wasn't just her. It was Ethan. That night, Alexander found her on the floor of Ethan's room, clutching the boy as he slept. Her voice was broken. "I should leave. If I go, maybe they'll stop." He crouched beside her, his hand covering hers. "Number. That's what they want. They want you gone, disgraced, forgotten. But I won't let them." She shook her head, tears streaming. "Why? Why fight for me when the whole world is against me?" He met her eyes, steady, fierce. "Because you're not just fighting for you, you're fighting for him. And you're not alone anymore." For the first time, she saw it. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the cold mask, but a man willing to burn everything down to protect the two people he loved most. The hearing was brutal. Lawyers painted Maya as reckless, dangerous, unfit. They waved the doctored photos, whispered about her past, twisted her silence into guilt. She stood trembling, her voice breaking as she tried to defend herself. "I am not perfect, but I love that boy more than my own life." The judge remained stone-faced, and then Alexander rose. The courtroom stilled as he spoke. "You want to talk about unfit? Fine. I've been unfit. I buried myself in work while my son grew up without a real parent. I cared more about contracts than bedtime stories. And Maya? She was the one who gave him love. The one who gave me a family I never knew I needed." Gasps rippled. Lawyers whispered furiously. But Alexander didn't stop. "If you want to drag someone's name through the mud, drag mine. I'm the billionaire. I'm the one who built empires. And I'm the one who will burn them to the ground before I let you take my son from her." Maya's breath caught. She had never heard him speak like that. Not in public. Not with his empire on the line. For the first time, Alexander Blackwood wasn't protecting his reputation. He was sacrificing it. The judge raised a hand. "This court will require further review. But the evidence against Miss Carter is clearly manipulated. Until proven otherwise, this case is dismissed. Relief crashed through Maya, her knees almost buckling. But she knew this wasn't victory. It was only a temporary reprieve. Because the enemies circling them weren't finished. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed wildly. Reporters screamed questions. But Alexander didn't flinch. He put his arm around Maya, shielding her, his voice calm and unwavering. She's not going anywhere, neither am I. And if anyone thinks they can tear this family apart, let them try. The crowd roared. Some cheered, others jeered. But one thing was clear. Alexander Blackwood had declared war, and war always came with a cost. That night, in the quiet of the mansion, Maya whispered to him, voice trembling, "You didn't have to do that. You could lose everything." He looked at her, his expression softer than she had ever seen. "I already have everything that matters, and I won't lose it again." Her heart pounded. For the first time, she believed him. But outside their fragile sanctuary, shadows moved. Enemies plotted. And the war Alexander had ignited was about to reach its most dangerous stage. The war hit harder than Alexander expected. Within days of his courtroom stand, the stock market turned against him. Blackwood Industries plummeted. Investors panicked. Contracts dissolved overnight. On television, analysts declared the empire's downfall. In boardrooms, whispers sharpened into knives. And in the mansion, silence grew heavier with each passing day. Alexander spent hours locked in his office, phone glued to his ear, voice raw with fury. "No, we are not selling. No, I will not cut her loose. If that's your condition, you're free to walk." He slammed the phone down, breath harsh. His empire was bleeding, and all because he had chosen to protect her. Maya watched from the doorway, her chest aching. She had never asked him to fight this war. But now, watching him crumble, she wondered if she was the very weapon his enemies had always wanted. The board called an emergency meeting. Old men in tailored suits, faces carved from stone, sat in judgment. "Alexander, you've compromised this company. For what? An escort? She is a liability. Investors won't touch us while she's in your home. You must cut ties. Step down if necessary." Alexander's voice was ice. "I built this company, and I will not abandon the woman who stood by my son." A murmur rippled, but his defiance cost him dearly. That night, headlines blared. Blackwood Board moves to oust CEO amid scandal. The empire was slipping from his hands. Maya felt the walls closing in. Everywhere she went, eyes burned into her. Whispers followed. Parents pulled their children away from Ethan at school. Her face was on every screen, every headline, every cruel joke. But what cut deepest was seeing Alexander unravel. His eyes darker each day, his voice sharper, his shoulders heavier. She found him one night, slumped at his desk, tie loosened, whiskey untouched. "You're losing everything," she whispered. He looked up, exhaustion etched in every line. "Not everything. I still have you. I still have him." Her throat tightened. "For how long? Until the board takes him? Until your empire collapses? Until you hate me for what I've cost you?" His jaw clenched. "That will never happen." But doubt gnawed at her. The breaking point came when Ethan came home from school in tears. "They said you're going to jail, Mom. They said I'll be taken away." Maya held him tight, her heart shattering. She could endure the world's cruelty, but not his fear. That night, as he slept, she stood over his bed, stroking his hair. Her decision burned in her chest like fire. She had to leave, not because she wanted to, but because she loved them too much to stay. The next morning, she told Alexander. Her suitcase was by the door. "Number." His voice cracked, sharper than she had ever heard. "You're not doing this." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I have to." "They won't stop, Alexander. Not until I'm gone. You and Ethan deserve peace. A chance to breathe. And if I stay, they'll destroy you both." He stepped forward, desperate. "We can fight this." "Maybe you can," she cut in. "But not Ethan. He's just a boy. He deserves a childhood, not a battlefield." "Oh." His hands shook as he reached for her. "Maya, don't do this. Don't you dare walk away." She pressed a trembling hand to his cheek, her voice breaking. "Sometimes love means letting go. And if I'm the storm in your life, then I have to disappear." Ethan woke to the sound of the door closing. He ran into the foyer, breathless. "Mom, Mom!" Alexander caught him, holding him close as the boy sobbed into his chest. He wanted to promise she'd come back. But he couldn't. Because he had watched her walk away with tears in her eyes and steel in her spine. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Blackwood, billionaire, titan, conqueror, felt powerless. In a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, Maya unpacked her small bag. The silence was suffocating. No Ethan's laughter. No Alexander's steady presence. Only her and the ghosts of her past. She pressed her face into her hands, whispering into the dark, "Please let him be okay. Please let them both be okay." But deep down, she knew her absence would not end the war. It would only make the battlefield more dangerous. Because enemies never stop when their prey walks away. They chase. They devour. And the Blackwoods were still in their sights. Nights in the motel were endless. The cheap clock ticked louder than her heartbeat. The neon sign outside bled through the curtains, painting the room in sickly red. Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling, clutching the one photo she had of Ethan. His smile. His innocence. Every fiber of her wanted to run back, to hold him again. But she forced herself still. She had left for his safety. Going back would undo everything. Or so she thought. 3 days later, she heard it on the news. Blackwood heir nearly kidnapped outside private school. Her blood turned to ice. The anchor's voice was clinical, detached. Sources confirmed that Ethan Blackwood was the target of an attempted abduction earlier this morning. Security intervened. The suspects fled. Authorities are investigating possible ties to business rivals. Maya dropped the remote. Her hands trembled so violently she could barely breathe. They weren't after her anymore. They were after Ethan. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Alexander's world was crumbling faster than ever. He stood in his study, fists clenched, as his security chief briefed him. "It was planned, sir, not random. Someone knew his schedule, his route. This wasn't opportunistic, it was strategic." Alexander's face was stone, but inside, fire roared. He had lost deals, investors, his reputation. But this was different. Now they had dared to touch his son. And for the first time in years, Alexander Blackwood wasn't just a businessman. He was a father ready for war. Maya couldn't stay away. That night, she showed up at the mansion. The guards hesitated but let her through. And when Alexander saw her step inside, his heart twisted with a mix of rage and relief. "You left," he said coldly. "And now you come back?" Her eyes glistened. "I saw the news. I couldn't God, Alexander. I couldn't just sit there knowing they're after him." His jaw tightened. "And you think coming back fixes that?" "I think being away broke me," she whispered. "And I know he needs me, just as much as he needs you." Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, his small voice cracking. "Mom?" Maya's breath hitched. She opened her arms. He flew down the steps, colliding into her embrace. She held him tightly, her tears falling into his hair. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." And in that moment, Alexander saw the truth he had always known, but fought to deny. No matter what the world said, no matter what his enemies plotted, Ethan's heart belonged to her. And so did his. But their reunion came at a price. The very next morning, a letter arrived. Hand-delivered. No sender. Alexander opened it at the breakfast table. His eyes narrowed as he read. "Withdraw from the CEO position. Sign over controlling shares. Or the next time, Ethan won't be so lucky." His hands trembled as he crushed the paper. Maya's face went pale. "They're threatening him. Through you." He looked at her, his voice low, lethal. They're threatening him through us." That day, Alexander pulled every string, called in every favor, tightened security until the mansion was a fortress. But even steel walls couldn't quiet the storm inside. At night, he found Maya in Ethan's room, sitting by the bed as the boy slept. Her hand stroked Ethan's hair, her eyes full of both love and fear. "He's just a child," she whispered. "He shouldn't have to live like this." Alexander stood in the doorway, shadows heavy on his face. "And?" "He won't. Not if I have anything to say about it." Her gaze lifted, meeting his. "You can't fight them forever. They have money, power, allies in every corner." His jaw set. "So do I." But deep down, She knew what he didn't want to admit. Power could crumble, allies could betray, and no empire was invincible. The next blow was swift and brutal. Footage leaked grainy, edited to the press. It showed Maya at the motel, exchanging envelopes with a man. The headlines exploded. Blackwood mistress secretly paid off criminals? Kidnap attempt, staged by Maya Carter? The narrative turned poisonous. She wasn't just unfit, she was painted as a conspirator. Maya's world collapsed. Reporters screamed questions outside the gates. Parents demanded Ethan be removed from her care. The board threatened Alexander with removal, unless he cut ties immediately. And for the first time, Maya saw doubt flicker in Alexander's eyes. It broke her. That night, she whispered to him through tears, "If you keep fighting for me, you'll lose everything. And this time, you might lose him too." He gripped her shoulders, desperate. "Don't say that. Don't you see? They're using lies because they're afraid of what we are together." Her lips trembled. "And what are we, Alexander?" His silence was heavy, but in his eyes, she saw it. Love, raw, unspoken, dangerous. Outside the mansion, in a car parked beneath the trees, a figure watched through binoculars. A phone buzzed. A cold voice spoke. "She's back, exactly where we want her." The trap was closing, and Maya Carter was walking straight into it. The invitation came wrapped in gold. A charity gala, hosted by the city's elite. The very circle that had mocked, humiliated, and hunted them. Alexander wanted to burn it, but refusing meant surrender proof that they were cornered. So he agreed, and Maya, though every instinct screamed to run, walked beside him into the lion's den. The ballroom glittered. Crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, dresses that cost more than houses. But behind the polished smiles, venom dripped. Whispers rose the moment they entered. "There she is. Brought her anyway?" God, the nerve. Maya kept her chin high, but her hands trembled at her sides. Ethan, dressed in his tiny suit, clutched her hand. His innocence steadied her. Alexander, tall and unflinching, was the shield. But even shields could be pierced. It began subtly. A reporter accidentally spilled wine on her gown. A board member loudly questioned Alexander's judgment within earshot. But the true strike came when the host tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, a short video presentation." The lights dimmed, the screens lit up, and Maya's world shattered. Grainy footage filled the ballroom. Her face, her voice, twisted into something it wasn't. Clips spliced together her at the motel, handing over envelopes. A staged recording of a man's voice. Payment confirmed. Kids' schedule handled. The implication was undeniable. Maya Carter wasn't a victim. She was the mastermind behind Ethan's attempted kidnapping. Gasps filled the room. Phones flashed. Reporters surged forward. And Maya froze. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That's not real. That's not me." But the crowd had already judged. Alexander's face was thunder. He stepped in front of her, fury blazing. "This is a fabrication. A lie," the host sneered. "Then why does it look so real?" "Alexander? Why does the evidence keep piling up?" Cameras zoomed in. Socialites whispered. Investors smirked. It was the perfect trap. Maya's knees buckled. For years she had endured whispers, insults, shadows. But this being painted as a monster to the child she loved was unbearable. She whispered through tears, "Alexander, maybe I should just—" "Don't," he cut her off sharply. His hand gripped hers, grounding her. "You don't walk away. Not tonight. Not ever again." And then he did what no one expected. He walked up to the stage, took the microphone. His voice thundered across the room. "You think this makes you powerful? You think lies will erase the truth? Let me tell you who Maya Carter is. She's the woman who stayed when everyone else abandoned us. She's the reason my son laughs again. And if any of you think you can shame her into silence, look at me. Because you'll have to go through me first." Gasps. Murmurs. Half the room stunned. The other half, smirking because they thought his fury meant nothing against doctored proof. But then, Alexander did something reckless. Something dangerous. He turned, pointing to the screens. "Release the rest of the footage. All of it. Every second. Don't cut it. Don't splice it. Show them the truth you're so desperate to hide." The host faltered. The control booth hesitated. "Do it," Alexander roared. For a tense moment, silence hung heavy. Then the screens flickered again. Longer footage rolled. The man in the motel was clearer now, his words clumsy, scripted, a setup. And then someone unseen slipped an envelope into Maya's hands. She looked startled, confused, shaking her head. The context shifted. What had been painted as conspiracy now looked like entrapment. The crowd murmured, doubt spread. Maya's breath caught. For the first time, cracks appeared in the lie. But the enemies weren't done. From the back of the room, Alexander's mother stepped forward, her smile sharp as glass. "Even if it was a setup," she purred. "The fact remains this woman is tainted. She has no place in this family. No place raising Ethan." Maya's face went pale. Ethan's little voice rang out, trembling. "She's my mom." The room stilled. Every camera swung toward the boy. His small hands clutched Maya's dress, his eyes fierce through tears. "She's my mom," he repeated, "and I don't care what anyone says." Maya fell to her knees, holding him tight. And Alexander, once silent, once cold, looked at his mother with fire in his eyes. "Enough." His voice cut like steel. "You will not touch her. You will not touch my son. If family means power over love, then I want no part of it." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted. Investors whispered. The Blackwood legacy cracked before their eyes. But for the first time, Maya felt something stronger than fear. She felt the power of truth breaking through lies. Outside, as they left the gala, flashbulbs blinded them. Reporters screamed questions. But Alexander kept Maya and Ethan close, his voice low but certain. "This isn't over. But tonight they saw us. Not their lies. Us." Maya, trembling, whispered back, "And what if it costs you everything?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "Then let it. Because without you, none of it matters." And somewhere, in the shadows, their enemies regrouped. Because if lies couldn't destroy them, then something far darker would have to. The night after the gala, the world shifted. Clips from the uncut footage spread online. Independent analysts confirmed what Alexander had forced the crowd to see. The video against Maya had been manipulated. Headlines flipped. Fabricated evidence? Blackwood gala scandal exposed. Was Maya Carter set up? For the first time, the tide was turning. But tides are dangerous things. They reveal hidden rocks beneath the surface. And the people who had set the trap weren't finished. Maya sat at the edge of Ethan's bed, brushing his hair back as he drifted into sleep. He clutched her hand, whispering, "Don't leave me again, Mom. Promise." Her throat tightened. "I promise, baby. I'm not going anywhere." But even as she spoke the words, she felt the weight of the storm pressing down. She wasn't safe. None of them were. In the study, Alexander faced his mother. Her voice was sharp, full of venom. "Do you see what she's done? Investors pulling out, the board circling like vultures, your name dragged through filth. And for what? For her?" Alexander's reply was ice. "For us. For a family. Something you wouldn't understand." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this. She'll drag you into the grave with her." He didn't flinch. But once she was gone, he poured himself a drink, his hands shaking for the first time in years. Because as much as he hated her words, part of him feared they might be true. 2 days later, his security chief barged into the office. "Sir, we've intercepted chatter. They're planning something. Not against the company, against her." Alexander's blood ran cold. "Maya?" "Yes. They want to remove her permanently, and they're willing to go through Ethan to do it." The glass shattered in his hand. For the first time, the battlefield wasn't the boardroom. It was his own home. That evening, Maya went out to buy a small gift for Ethan, a simple thing, a book he had wanted. She walked through the quiet street, clutching the paper bag, trying to breathe normal again, trying to pretend she wasn't hunted. But she felt it. Footsteps, shadows. Her pulse quickened. "Miss Carter?" A voice called softly behind her. She turned too late. A van screeched to a halt. 2 men grabbed her, forcing her inside. Her scream was muffled by a rough hand, the bag dropping, the book tumbling into the gutter. And just like that, Maya was gone. Back at the mansion, Ethan waited by the window. "Mom's late," he murmured. Alexander checked his watch, frowning. Maya was never late, not with Ethan waiting. Then his phone buzzed. A message. You want her back? Step down. Sign over your empire, or you'll never see her again. His chest tightened, rage and fear colliding. For the first time in his life, Alexander Blackwood, the man who had always controlled the game, was being controlled. Hours passed. No calls. No location. Ethan cried himself to sleep, clutching the fallen book, the one someone had picked up and returned to the mansion. A cruel reminder. Alexander sat in the dark study, the message burning in his mind. He could save her. All he had to do was give up everything. But if he surrendered, his enemies would own him. Own Ethan. Their lives would never be safe. He pressed his fists into his desk, whispering to the empty room, "God, what do I do?" For once, there was no answer. Meanwhile, Maya woke in a cold warehouse. Her hands bound, her mouth gagged, the smell of oil and rust in the air. Across the room, shadows moved. A voice spoke. "You should have stayed gone, Miss Carter. But now you'll serve your purpose, either as a bargaining chip or as a warning." Her heart pounded. She thought of Ethan, of his little voice begging her not to leave. And in that moment, she knew she couldn't give up. Even if no one came, even if she had to crawl through fire, she would find her way back to him. At the mansion, Alexander stood at Ethan's bedside, watching him sleep. The boy's small hand clutched the book Maya had dropped. Alexander whispered, his voice breaking, "I will bring her back, I swear it, even if I have to burn the world down." The message was clear. Sign everything away, or lose her forever. But Alexander Blackwood had made his choice the moment Maya was taken. He wasn't going to negotiate. He was going to war. For years, Alexander's empire had been built not just on contracts and boardrooms, but on information, alliances, favors, debts. Tonight, he called them all in. Within hours, a team assembled. Former military, men loyal to him alone. Not the board, not the shareholders, him. The mansion became a command post. Maps on the table, phones buzzing, weapons laid out. Ethan, wide-eyed, clutched Alexander's sleeve. "Dad, where's Mom?" Alexander knelt, his hands steady on his son's shoulders, though his voice was tight with fire. "She's coming home, Ethan. I swear it, but I have to go get her." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "Promise?" Alexander's throat tightened. He had never broken a promise to his boy, and he wouldn't start now. "I promise." Meanwhile, in the warehouse, Maya fought against the ropes, cutting into her wrists. Her captors barely looked at her. To them, she wasn't human, just leverage. But Maya Carter had survived worse. Every second, every breath, she planned. Watching exits, counting footsteps, waiting for her chance. And through it all, she clung to one thought. Alexander will come. He has to. The night was thick with rain when Alexander's convoy arrived at the industrial district. Engines cut. Silence swallowed the street. He stepped out, black coat whipping in the storm, eyes burning with a fury that no boardroom had ever seen. "Positions," he ordered. The men fanned out, shadows in the dark. Tonight, Alexander wasn't a CEO. He was a man fighting for the only family he had left. Inside, the kidnappers laughed, playing cards, confident their trap was sealed. Until the first light went out, then another, and suddenly, silence. One of the men cursed, grabbing his gun. "What the hell?" The door crashed open. Alexander stood there, framed in lightning. And K's erupted. Shots rang, shouts filled the air. The warehouse became a battleground. Alexander moved like a man possessed, fists, fury, steel. He wasn't trained for this. But rage made him unstoppable. One captor lunged. Alexander struck him down. Another raised a gun, only to be tackled by one of Alexander's men. Through the chaos, Maya screamed, "Alexander!" He turned, eyes locking onto her. And in that instant, nothing else mattered. He fought his way across the floor, every step carved in blood and fire. Finally, he reached her. Her wrists were raw, her face pale, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "You came," she whispered, voice breaking. He cut the ropes with trembling hands. Always. For a second, they held each other, the storm raging around them. But it wasn't over. From the shadows, a slow clap echoed. Alexander's mother stepped forward, flanked by armed men. Her voice was calm, cruel. "I warned you, Alexander. She will be your ruin." And tonight she almost was. Maya froze. You? The older woman's smile was thin. Did you really think a few street thugs had the power to break a Blackwood number? Only I do. And I'll do whatever it takes to keep this family clean. Alexander's face hardened. You call this clean? Kidnapping? Lies? Destroying the only person who's ever made Ethan feel loved? She's filth, his mother hissed. And if you won't cut her loose, I will. Her men raised their weapons. For a moment, time stood still. Then Alexander stepped in front of Maya, his arms spread, his voice like thunder. You'll have to kill me first. The room crackled with tension. One wrong move, and it would all end in blood. But then a shout from outside. Sirens. Police. Lights flooded the warehouse. The kidnappers panicked, scattering. Alexander's men moved fast, disarming, subduing. His mother's face twisted with rage as officers poured in. This isn't over, she spat, before being dragged away in handcuffs. In the chaos, Alexander pulled Maya to her feet, holding her as though he'd never let go again. She was trembling, tears streaming, but she whispered through them, You risked everything. He cupped her face, his own voice breaking. You are everything. For the first time, the words weren't hidden in silence. They were raw, spoken, unshakable. Later, as dawn broke, they drove back to the mansion. Ethan flew into Maya's arms, sobbing, clinging like he'd never let go. Alexander stood behind them, his eyes heavy but alive. He had saved her, saved them. But as the sun rose, he knew the war wasn't finished. Enemies remained. His empire was fragile. His mother's betrayal ran deep. And yet, with Maya and Ethan beside him, for the first time in years, Alexander Blackwood felt like he could face anything. The sun rose over the Blackwood estate, washing the stone walls in pale gold. For the first time in weeks, Maya sat at the breakfast table with Ethan curled against her side, still unwilling to let her go. Alexander poured coffee with a steady hand, but his eyes carried the exhaustion of a man who had walked through fire. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, there was peace inside these walls. The police investigation unraveled everything. The doctored tapes, the staged payments, the attempted kidnapping. Piece by piece, the truth came to light. And at the center of it all, his mother. The matriarch of the Blackwood Empire, once untouchable, now stood accused of conspiracy, corruption, and endangerment of her own grandson. The city was stunned. The mighty had fallen. But for Alexander, it wasn't triumph. It was grief, because no matter what she had done, she was still his mother. And Ethan's grandmother. The board of Blackwood Industries wasted no time. Your name is poison, one member spat across the table. Your family a scandal. Step down, or we'll vote you out. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his gaze calm for the first time. Then vote. The room buzzed, shocked. He continued, his voice steady. I built this company. I bled for it. But I will not sacrifice the people I love to keep it. Not anymore. And with that, he signed the papers. Alexander Blackwood, the man who once ruled towers of glass and steel, walked away. Maya watched him that night in the garden, the air cool, the stars sharp above. You gave it up, she whispered. He looked at her, his jaw unclenching, his voice softer than she'd ever heard. I gave up the prison I built for myself, and I chose us instead. Her chest tightened. She touched his hand. But what will you do now? He smiled faintly, almost boyishly. Live. For the first time, Maya. I'll actually live. Weeks passed. The headlines shifted. Blackwood Industries crowned a new CEO. Society found a new scandal to feast on. But in a quiet corner of the city, a different story bloomed. Maya enrolled in night classes, determined to give Ethan a life without shame. Alexander, no longer chained to a desk, walked Ethan to school each morning, learning what it meant to be more than a provider, to be a father. They ate dinner together, laughed together, fought small fights and made up. The empire was gone, but a family had risen from its ashes. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, Ethan tugged at Alexander's sleeve. Dad? Alexander crouched down. Yeah, buddy? The boy looked at Maya, then back at him. Can we be a real family now? Forever? Maya's breath caught. Tears welled. Alexander's throat tightened as he pulled Ethan close. We already are. Later that night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Maya stood by the window, watching the stars. Alexander came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned into him, whispering, "I still don't understand why you risked everything for me, for us." He pressed his lips to her hair, his voice rough but certain. "Because without you, Maya, none of it meant anything. Money, power, reputation, it was all empty. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, a home, a reason, love." Her tears fell freely now, but they weren't of pain. They were of release, of healing. She turned, their foreheads touching, and whispered back, "Then let's never let go." And so, the story of Alexander Blackwood, the billionaire who once thought he had everything, came to a close, not in a boardroom or a gala, but in a small home filled with laughter, forgiveness, and the quiet strength of love. Maya Carter, once dismissed as nothing more than a call girl, had proven herself not through wealth or status but through the unshakable truth of her heart. And together, against every odd, they built the one thing money could never buy: a family,